Before the big war, I've never actually thought about joining the army. I have an engineering degree, I had an office job. However, unfortunately, Russians had other plans in my life. What makes you a great pilot? One would ask. And immediately, first thing that comes to everyone's mind is basically probably hand-eye coordination and huge amounts of hours spent playing video games. But that just ain't it. The amount of knowledge to successfully operate a drone exceeds this list just a little bit. Firstly, the war we are currently having is a war on frequencies. So when it comes to drones, jammers, any antenna equipment, physics is your main ally. When I was learning physics in school and university, I thought that, well, I knew it, but now when I actually had to experience and see how everything works in real life, I can finally say that I understand it. And a lot of times it just dawned on me. So, well, okay, wow, that's how actually everything works. Don't worry, I'm not saying that you need a PhD in radio physics to do it, but well, basic knowledge will always be helpful, like understanding how wave spectrum looks like, or for example, what's the difference between 1.2 gigahertz and 5.8 gigahertz in different environments. Also, questions like how powerful would a jammer need to be to overwhelm my drone? And I'm not here to teach you physics. Well, I just know as much as I need to do my job right. The rest is up for you to explore. So here are some topics that you need to learn for yourself. If you find yourself in a drone combat, those would be extremely useful. Radio horizon or Fresnel zone, those are really helpful when you're trying to pick a position for your flight squad, or for example, if you're already on a position, you would know how to strike something with your FPV. Antenna polarization, gain, and radiational patterns would also be helpful because every drone flies with antennas on it. There are antennas sticking out of your RC controller. They don't just work like this one to another. They have polarization, radiation patterns, so you need to know how they interact with each other to actually operate your drone successfully. Harmonics is also a thing that you need to keep in mind when you're flying, because imagine you're flying a drone, a DJI, which uses 2.4 and 5.8 gigahertz, and there's a jammer which works in 1.2 gigahertz. Well, naturally, you would think that those do not interfere with each other, but harmonics may get into a way. So it's also quite important to keep that in mind. Path loss and attenuation, and I'm speaking about how waves flying further and further become much less powerful. Also, you need to know the difference between decibels, dBms, and dBis. I won't say a word about it because I would make just a fool of myself, but it's something that every pilot needs to know. Transmitter power and how it affects link with the receiver. Well, it's different for most of the drones, for a lot of drones actually. In every drone, it works differently, but combined with knowing that there's a jammer in the area, you need to know how powerful your transmitter to fly effectively. Everything I've just mentioned needs to be kept in mind through all of the time, always when you're working, when you're preparing for the mission, because if you are flying a drone at war, most likely this war involves a lot of other pilots who might interfere with each other. Knowing how physics and environment and software and hardware interacts with everything with itself, it's really, really important. And I wouldn't say that it's a complete list. I'm sure I forgot to mention a lot of stuff, but well, those are just first that comes to mind. I've asked my friend pilots from other squads, from other battalions, and well, that's basically the generalized terms that you need to keep in mind. Well, if you learn something extra, it's always helpful, yeah, but I think that that's where you need to start, at least. And also, if you know that I missed something for sure, please leave a comment and help the community to know more. An example that I just mentioned, imagine you are working with DJIs. They just have the regular 2.4 plus 5.8 gigahertz frequency, and that's it. Nothing more to know. Well, maybe apart from extensional antennas that you might buy online. They're not actually produced by DJI, but they are really helpful when you're flying in a combat zone. But even when you're working with something as user-friendly as Mavic 3, you still need to know how it responds to being jammed, how it reacts on the level of its software. For example, if you're trying to jam one of its frequencies, 2.4, it automatically switches to 5.8, and this also works in an opposite direction. So yeah, basically it's not all about the radio physics, it's how hardware and software and physics all work together. Also, since I am sure a lot of you have seen more and more military uses of FPVs all around the world in different conflicts, we need to keep in mind that FPV video is relying on an analog video technology. And this means if you tune to exact frequency of FPV's video transmitter with just, well, basically a regular old TV, you will be able to intercept its video without a problems. This and a separate technology, separate frequency and protocol used to actually fly it, well, the so-called RC link, meaning that flying one drone is using two different, completely different technologies and frequencies, but not to be confused with DJIs when you have two frequencies which combine both the RC link and the video. Understanding the difference between analog video link and digital links also might be quite important, because as I mentioned in my previous video, when you're flying FPV or, like I mentioned, Russian Molnia, you might jam its video signal, but it would be still having the ability to control the drone. And in opposite direction, if you jam the RC link, you wouldn't be able to fly a drone and you would just see a video without the ability to control it. Maybe I made it sound like something extremely important, the knowledge of physics and software and hardware, but the also really important skill when flying a drone, since not a lot of them quite user friendly. A lot of those products are actually being developed with the war, on the war, so you would need to be able to fix things. And believe me, there's quite a lot of fixing and preparing. Obviously, since everything in drones is electronics, well, almost everything, it's all about the wiring, so naturally you would need to be able to fix wiring to, like, work with different crimpers and stuff, and maybe soldering. And even if your drone is super mega extremely user friendly, it doesn't necessarily mean that you won't need to be able to fix it. Like this one time when me and my squad mates were trying to learn how to fly a vampire drone, which is basically a huge hexacopter bomber designed to carry around 15 kilos of payload. And we were flying over the field trying to learn how it works. And nobody told us that on that exact day, on the field next to us, there's a separate squad testing their jammers. Long story short, we crashed it from altitude of 400 meters, and we were supposed to fix it just in a way not to get in trouble. If you're an active service member, well, I hope you know what I felt. I hope you understand what I had to go through. So naturally, you need to know all about wiring. Well, not all, just enough to fix it. You need to understand what a flight controller is, how electric motors work, what is ESC, what is PDB, and all the terminology needed to construct a copter, basically. Also, knowing how different servers connect to pinouts on a flight controller is really useful, because not in all flight controllers those pins are glued in. They can fall out of them, and especially when you're working with a vampire, the thing that carries 15 kilos of payload, of dangerous payload, one of those servos acts like a hatch on a bombing airplane, so it opens a latch which releases the bomb. From my personal experience, the best way to understand how drones work is to try to assemble one. Some time ago, I was in a small team that had to finish construction of unfinished styrofoam airplane, training styrofoam airplane, and I had to rewire it. I had to tune autopilot settings to make it fly in a way that we needed it to fly, and that gave me loads of experience in understanding how the autopilot ecosystem works. And later I attempted to assemble a copter by myself. Unfortunately, yeah, I didn't finish it, but it was almost ready to fly. In fact, it did fly, but not as it's supposed to fly, so I've missed the final part about fine-tuning it, but yeah, that gave me also loads of experience. So naturally, at this point, I'm way ahead of myself before the big war in understanding the autopilot. Another important skill is knowing how to work with batteries, how to charge them correctly, what does 6S2P means and stuff like this. By the way, this one it's LiPo battery that I found on an undetonated Russian FPV. Me and my squad mates disarmed the bomb, and I've kept it as a souvenir. So who knows, maybe someday I'll charge it and it will fly in an opposite direction. Sometimes even metal walking skills are needed, because um, when you're flying drones, you always have some kind of tripod to hold its antenna. So imagine your metal antenna is broken. So you would need to drill it, to do something with it. That would be quite important. And if you would be working with a fixed wing drone and like airplane style drone, in 90% of the time it has some kind of launcher, which we call catapult. After quite a few of launches, I'm sure it will deteriorate and you would need to have it fixed. And I'm not getting into unmanned ground vehicles, because let's say it's a whole different genre of drones. Like this one time when a Ukrainian UGV, while on a mission, lost its track near Konstantinivka, and a random guy just appeared out of nowhere, found some random wire lying around and just fixed it. There's much more mechanical work with those, as you can imagine. Sure, a lot of units have a dedicated team which prepares drone for a mission, which fixes drones in between missions, who rewire it and do the stuff I've mentioned before. But if you are on a mission, your squad is alone with its problem. So either you get in, you fix it by yourself and you do your job, or you abort the mission, which in some cases might be really, really bad. As for more army-related skills, it's obviously maps and explosives. The way I see it is, for example, if you have a squad of 3 or 4 people, your skill sets must overlap. So 2 people must know how to use maps and satellites images, then 2 people must know how to fly drones, and 2 people need to know how to fix everything, or at least make it work till the end of your operation. And ideally, everyone should know how to handle explosives. This works both ways, as for kamikaze drones or recon drones, for your own safety. However, if you are an active service member, it's not me who needs to explain it to you. As for the maps aspect of this, naturally, the pilot wouldn't be able to control the drone and the visuals, let's say. Naturally, he'll need someone to guide him. Here's the spot to shine to the mapping expert. While the pilot is controlling the flight data like speed, altitude, trying to compensate to wind and other stuff. The navigator is looking on the imagery from the drone and trying to compare it to his map. I hope you get the idea. Also, me and my squad mates have wasted a lot of time flying in FPV goggles. Imagine this, you are flying an FPV in a goggles on an unknown territory. Since you are in goggles and you need to keep your hands on the RC all of the time, you won't be able to look at the map. So the navigator helps you fly. If both of you can see the exact same image, but you lose the ability to point at the screen, the pilot and navigator start playing charades. A lot of times we had situation like the navigator is going, do you see this tree line that looks like dick and balls? Yeah, okay, great. So fly over the tip of the penis and go to the forest that looks like tits. Well, as fun as it might sound, after some time we've abandoned the idea of using the FPV goggles and we just switched to a small FPV screen, and you wouldn't believe it felt like a leap forward, like an invention of a new thing. After some time our pilot learned how to fly by himself. He became more and more confident in flying his drone and looking on the screen. So he had his tablet with a map lying next to him. So he was able to, in a lot of cases, fly by himself. And that gave ability to navigator to do other stuff, like, for example, look at the satellite images and gather more intel while you are flying to your target or stuff like this. And for different type of drones, the navigator uses, well, the same skill set, but it looks different for everyone. For example, recon drones, I mean fixed wing recon drones, can fly up to really high altitudes, so you would see a lot of terrain, and that would actually look like a map. You would see much further and much more unique landmarks. If you apply if you're flying a kamikaze plane, you wouldn't be flying like on a few thousand meters. You would be flying much lower. Well, Russian Molnias are flying from 50 to 100 to 1,000 meters. They would see much less of those landmarks, like more zoomed in map image. So you would need to be able to look for less unique landmarks. But when you're flying on copters, either FPV or heavy bombers, you wouldn't be flying much higher than like DJI drones on while shooting weddings. So it wouldn't be about unique landmarks, I'd say, but maybe counting tree lines is what we do, or like looking for that specific bush. So keep in mind, you never know when you'll find yourself. So navigating big and small is quite useful skill. Unfortunately, you would never be 100% ready for any war. A lot of things I've mentioned in this video will only come to you with time. And no matter how smart you are, some things just need to be experienced. Well, anyway, that's that. So I hope I haven't missed anything that was interesting to you. But if I did, please leave a comment. I'll try to get back to it later. Or maybe there's something completely different, whole another topic about drones that you would like to hear. Please leave a comment. Actually, since this is a new channel, leaving any comment would be appreciated, as well as like and subscription. Also, my squad is currently fundraising for a new pickup truck, so I'm leaving a PayPal link in the description below. And alright, see you next time. Bye.